Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is my life as a landlord. I'm so pleased you're educating yourself and you are joining us today. I love giving you different formats for episodes. It always keeps you on your feet, sort of like our episode today and table topics. You're going to learn more about that. Today is our final installment of this series of Rental Roundtable Toastmasters style. Earlier in 2025, I spoke at a Toastmasters club online. They wanted me to speak about, what do you know, rentals. The club is called Money Matters, and during that meeting, we played a Toastmasters game called Table Topics that makes you think on your feet. And I am back today with my favorite Toastmasters, Dan Dyble and Karen Hall. I'm so happy to have you guys back. Yay!
It's good to be here.
Glad to be back.
Now, good, good, good. I appreciate you guys and your input. This is really fun. Banter and education all at the same time, right? Now, as a listener, if you've missed the previous rental roundtables with Dan and Karen, there are 4 previous episodes in the library right now. And we conquered the topics of ethical dilemmas, landlord rights and responsibilities, rental affordability, and power and dynamics. Today, our final installment, we're talking about the social and cultural aspects of providing rentals with a bit of an international twist. But this is Toastmasters, so let's learn more about what that is. Karen, could you tell us what Toastmasters is all about?
I'd be glad to. Toastmasters is an international not-for-profit organization that has been in existence for over 100 years. In Toastmaster meetings, you learn communication and leadership. Your communication, not just public speaking, but communication in general. How to have conversations with people, how to listen to people to hear what they're saying. We also teach you leadership skills, how to become a better leader, how to run meetings, how to organize events. Overall, it's an organization that I have learned so much from in the past 10 years, and I invite you all to join us to improve your skills.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, I mentioned table topics. Dan, enlighten us. What's table topics all about?
Table topics is your chance to learn to deal with impromptu situations. You constantly have impromptu conversations because when you go for coffee with your friends, nothing's scripted. This is more a chance for you to be given a topic that you hadn't expected and then being asked to respond immediately in a coherent way. With table topics, you're given a topic, and then you have to speak for at least 1 minute immediately, 1 minute, but not more than two. So you're learning to condense. Now, we cheat in this session. We don't hold ourselves to 1 to 2 minutes because we have way too many opinions. But in the meeting, you will be held to that. And where it's useful is in job interviews,
Mm-hmm.
both as the interviewer and the interviewee. It is also very, very useful when you are trying to be concise in meetings, town hall meetings, things like that. As a landlord, as a tenant, how do you get your point across? How do you learn to take that story, all this arduous stuff and energy that you've got about the topic, and slice and dice it down to the core message that you really want the other person to hear? And what are you listening for? Everything in a Toastmasters meeting is timed. It's also evaluated. And so, what you will get in Toastmasters with a table topic, you'll do the table topic, and then someone will say, if you'd used more hand gestures, if you'd leaned in, if you had not, I kind of got lost, when you were trying to, like getting to your the to the point. And you learn not to do that. You learn to pause and use. Nobody knows that inside there's utter confusion. You pause and they assume you've either just said something really smart or you're about to. So everyone kind of leans in or they're trying to think back to what you said, and then you can speak again. In the meantime, you're getting your thoughts together. You will learn skills like that. So you're given a topic, you speak for 1 to 2 minutes, you get evaluated. That is a table topic. It's about spontaneity. Thanks. Let's do today's stuff. What do
Okay,
we
today's
look?
stuff, social,
What's our general thing? Social what?
social and cultural aspects on providing housing.
Oh,
Social and
okay.
cultural aspects on providing housing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Who wants to go first?
Sure. What's
Okay.
what's the question?
The first question, how does the renter-landlord dynamic differ in other countries?
Oh, I'm up for this because I've
Okay.
got some really good friends who live half the year here and half the year in Panama. So I act as their agent here when they're away. And down in Panama, I was over having a beverage with them the other day, and their renter got hold of them and said, yeah, the battery in the boat is dead because they own waterfront property. So they rent it out complete with a boat so that you can get to the store and things like that. But the biggest thing I learned down there is that if you own a property in Panama, there are two ways you can own it. If you own it and live in it, then you don't need to worry. You can have it. But if you own it and then you are away 6 months, someone can move in. They then own the property. Yeah,
What?
like no kidding. Yeah, it's so it's very, very different. When I watch what they go through with their tenant, a lot of it feels really familiar. An awful lot of it is very, very familiar. It's, and Jen has some, I've talked with Jen, and I've listened to some of the episodes about making sure you've got an in situ team, somebody who's going to go and deal with that battery that's dead, or with the plumbing, or the, I don't know what happened to the railing on the stairs, but it's not there anymore,
Mhm.
and things like that. And down there, it is much more laissez-faire than it is here in British Columbia. It's
Mhm.
much more up to the
Mhm.
landlord. There is not the support in it. One of the other ones, we were talking about power and dynamics between the landlord and the tenant. And Jen was explaining about how in all the regions that she's talking about, there are different rules. Well, down there, it seems that there are very few rules for the landlord or the tenant. And so it's very, very important in a place like that to make sure that you build a clear relationship and that you understand whether or not the document you're signing is going to have any meaning in that culture. Because I can go down into some cultures where, people will sign something and yeah, that isn't what we're doing. I've signed contracts for manufacturing with people in some countries, and as I'm getting on the plane, they start renegotiating. And I've just spent a week negotiating with them. And they go, yeah, that's not how it's going to be. Give us a call when you land, kind of thing. Well, what are my capabilities and things? Very, very different in different countries. I'm complete.
For sure. For sure. I'll go. I'll go. I am fascinated by how the providing housing works globally. I am fascinated with it, which is one of the reasons why I started this podcast. I'm such a nerdy landlord. And did you know that in the United Kingdom, you have to have the unit certified every year? The tenant has to be licensed to be a tenant, and they also verify that you're allowed to be a tenant, and the landlord has to be licensed as well. So that's a different dynamic all on its own. I don't know anywhere in the US or Canada where all three of those things are required. I know places where the landlord has to be licensed, or the tenant has to have permission, or the unit has to be inspected. I know versions of it, but not all three. So that's in the UK. In the city of Berlin itself owns over 300,000 apartments. Could you imagine the city of Vancouver owning any number of apartments. I mean, it just seems like mayhem for me. That I instantly go to like East Hastings, I instantly go to slumlords and just mayhem. Now, I'm hoping the city of Berlin does a better job as housing providers than I envision the city of Vancouver would. That's my take on that one. So that's very interesting. I don't know of any other city that has taken on providing housing as a main mission, as a pillar of their civic providing, right? Their civic service. There's all kinds of other examples that I could give that are just amazing, and it really skews how you think because everybody assumes that where they are as either a landlord or a tenant, that's how it is everywhere. And I know I laugh when I get into landlord forums on Facebook, for example. And I can always tell when there's someone from Ontario, even before they say they're a landlord in Ontario, because they start talking about forms. And there's alphabetic forms, a form N, a form L, a form this, a form that. And I go, that isn't how it is outside of Ontario, but they don't know that. And so this is where I have to educate people and say, look, you guys, in Hawaii, California, even in Queensland, Australia, it's not all the same because the rules are different geographically. And I think that's one of the blessings and curses of providing housing is because it is so different. And 5 minutes after you sign a lease or you rent a unit or whatever it might be, it can change, right? I always have to say that in my location specific podcast that this is not the end all be all because 5 minutes after this airs, there could be a bylaw change, right? There could be a habitability requirement or an essential service requirement change that I don't know about that then applies to you and wherever that rental is. And so, how does the renter landlord dynamic differ in other countries? I think it's based on the tenancy laws of that country. I could go on, but I'll stop there.
Well, other than Canada and the US, or actually just Arizona, I really don't know too much about the tenancy acts in other areas. I do know from what I've read in Europe, a lot of the places, tenants have to provide their own appliances. So when you're looking to rent, you have to make sure your stove and your fridge are going to fit in that unit. You have to buy fairly standardized ones to move with you. In Arizona, where I do own property, I believe it tends to lean more towards the landlord having more rights than the tenants. My first tenant that I had, while he looked good on paper, was not a great tenant. He had been a homeowner previously and therefore had no references as a tenant. I would get calls and messages. The screw is loose in the cupboard. Can you please send the handyman to come and fix it? And then a panicked email the next day. I haven't heard from the handyman yet. This was a constant issue that I had. So when our 1 year lease was coming up, I contacted the person that I deal with there who assists me with my property management there and said, how much can I increase his rent? And he said, if you want him out, double, triple the rent. And literally, I could have done that. Now, I'm not that type of a person. So in other countries, depending upon what the rules are, there could be more power to the landlords. There could be more power to the tenants. It varies from place to place, and you really have to become very aware of what the rules and regulations are when you're purchasing property to rent out.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Next question. Everybody ready?
Yes.
All right. Karen, let's go right back to you if that's okay. What can
Yes.
be done to make renting more dignified and less stigmatized?
I think we're actually becoming a culture where it is becoming that. When I was growing up, your aim was to be able to purchase something and have something in your name. But particularly in Metro Vancouver, where I live, that has become non-existent for most people now. The average price of a resident in Surrey, where I live, is 1.3 million, I think. That's just the
Mhm.
average price. Imagine if you were just coming into the market, kids coming out of university and college, getting into their first jobs, and knowing that they have to have two to $300,000 for a down payment. That's now a pipe dream. So what they do now is focus more on what do I want my lifestyle to be? And in order to fit that lifestyle, how much can I afford for rent? Rent something really small so that I can travel frequently. I can do these activities. Or I want my home to be my castle. Rent something a little bit more ostentatious, something a little larger, something with a view. And I find that nobody now has any concerns with saying they're a renter compared to a homeowner. So I do believe that it is becoming more of a norm.
Excellent. Dan, what's your take? What can be done to make renting more dignified, less stigmatized?
Me, renting is not stigmatized at all. I've got so many friends who just assume that renting is the most sensible thing for them, that it's normal, absolutely normal in my social group. I would say at least 30% of my friends are renters globally. Now, renting in Paris is very different than renting in London, England, which is very different from renting in Vancouver. And in all three of those big cities, renting is the norm,
Hmm.
or for the people I know. And the other thing is the expectation of the size of an apartment in Paris and London, what they expect compared to what I would expect as somebody who is used to the North American market. Our apartments are huge compared to theirs. And then when I go to Hong Kong and Japan, like they become packet sized. They are super efficient. It's amazingly, it's really cool how much they fit their life in. But it's about lifestyle. My friends who rent don't want the hassles. Most of them aren't as much as my business partner who has decided not even to they don't even have it. They have two suitcases, two carry-ons, and their person and their computers, and they've been at it 4 years. They're in their 42nd country, so they're definitely renters, but they they will never own again. They have decided that owning is a mistake. They feel that they are better served by having a lifestyle and enjoyment that they get by not having to be back at a place doing the maintenance, dealing with someone who wants the screw tightened. So,
Hmm.
yeah, because if you
Yeah.
own a house, then that's where you're stationed. A renter
And
can
there's no one
pick
to
up with
call.
a month's, yeah, well, there is. It's called tradespeople, but but you think it when you think about it, if you want career flexibility, when I worked for Exxon, I had to sell a house and move and things, and my godchildren wouldn't consider while they're building their careers, they would not consider buying as a way. If they did buy, then they would buy with an eye to it becoming a rental that they would abandon when they change cities, and they would become remote landlords. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what one of them's doing. He's moving to Calgary from Vancouver and dealing with the fact that he and his siblings own an apartment, a condominium in Vancouver. So no stigma.
Gotcha. Okay, so my turn to answer. What can be done to make renting more dignified and less stigmatized? I would like to change the question. I agree with you. I don't think there isn't any stigma in this. And what I'd like to do is say, okay, renting can be strategic. And for the examples that you just gave, it is strategic. Renting can also be the only option, especially when folks are just entering the workforce, breaking out on their own or downsizing, they're downsizing from a big house and living independently as their health fails, things like that. So I like to change the question to what can be done to make renting more valuable to the renter? And here's my answer to that question. When someone is a renter for as long as they're going to be, short or long, if they are a good renter, they're not being mischievous and they're paying their rent on time and they're not reporting non-safety items like what you had said, Karen, about the screw loose, there should be a way to report that to give a marker. Because remember, as a landlord, I'm always looking for previous landlord references, pay stubs, bank statements. I'm looking for all of these markers and I always check credit. And so what I'd like to do is either report good credit paid on time on their credit rating, which is an existing resource that already exists, that landlords can report good credit for good tenants. So that's the first thing. Or what I'd really like to do is create a separate system, which may not be the best logistics wise, but because we have such a huge renter base globally, if you have a renter that would have a credit rating of some kind, in Canada, personal credit ratings are letters, typically letters and numbers. In the States, it's numbers as well. And so, they're different. And then of course there's business credit, which is a whole different scheme. But what I'd like to do is be able to report it. Now, on the flip side of that, if you have a tenant reporting site, then there should also be a landlord reporting site. Because if you have a slumlord, you should be able to also say that. Now, the Fair Credit Reporting Act in the 1970s said that if anybody wants to, if you're going to make payments, then you should report on those payments, and it's good and the bad. That's fair credit reporting. My idea would be allow to report on their credit and allow that the tenant report that the tenant is paying on time. And there are places in the States where you can do that. As a landlord, you can report that the tenant is paying on time, that they're paying properly, but it has to do with the money. But landlording isn't always about the money. In fact, that's only a part of it. So how could we make renting more valuable to the renter? Help them show their trail of what good people, what good humans they are. And oh, by the way, they happen to be renters. That's my take.
Sort of like you get with Airbnb.
Yes, like that, but not as a traveler. Okay, what's our last question?
Shall I ask it?
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Is owning property still the American dream, or is that ideal outdated?
Oh, I'll jump in first.
Okay.
Owning property. I don't even know if owning property is the American dream anymore. I think we have already alluded to that multiple times in this episode that it doesn't appear that owning property is the American dream anymore. It's designing your lifestyle and it's designing a world that you can enjoy and instead of be in a whole mess of stress, which seems what people are doing. But it doesn't appear to me that owning property is the American dream anymore. I think it is outdated. I think that technology has outpaced that nuclear family, with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with 2 cars and all that. I mean, I don't think that's where people are at, because then you're slave to that mortgage. I think that the American dream has changed and will continue to change. Who's next?
I, I think again, it matters. It depends which country you're in. There's a huge shift in some countries to owning property where it hasn't been possible before. My friends in China. Now, when they buy a property, it's still technically owned by the state, but they are free to buy and sell and to play the real estate market as people listening to this podcast are. But it's an interesting question. The idea of homeownership was to demonstrate to the community, to the world, that you were stable, successful, and so on. And now those aren't valued as much. In the gig economy, having a job for 5 years is, people go, really? The idea of a career no longer means being in one place with one company. Now you have a career that spans the globe. So for me, I would say definitely outdated and being replaced by other values. I do think that owning property is still a great business. I think it's a great way to have relatively passive income. And I've always said there's no such thing as passive income. You have to work at being a landlord. But for me, yeah, it's not part of the dream anymore. For the reasons that it was. What about you, Karen?
I don't know if it's still the dream. I think for the older generation, it definitely is. But for the generation now that is coming into the market, into living on their own, I don't think it is. I think lifestyle is more the dream now. And so while they would like to have something tangible, they're more concerned with what can I do to make myself happy? What can I do to ensure that I am enjoying life? I don't want to work all of my life so that I can own a home on retirement when I can't really enjoy it because now I have health issues. I want to enjoy life now. So I don't think that owning property is so much of the dream as it used to be. But I think affordability in living is more of the dream now. So for us, affordability in living was buying that house because you knew in a few years your costs were only going to go up slightly, whereas renting they were going to go up significantly. Now, I think the generation coming in, what they're focusing on is, can I find somewhere that I can afford to live, but still have that lifestyle that I want to have? So if I have to give up owning property to get it, I'm willing to. That's my take on it.
I just have
I think the
one.
same thing that may
Oh,
apply
go
for
ahead.
vehicles too. I think the same
Yes.
thing applies to vehicles too. In the city, I see more and more people choosing to go with car share programs and public transit built
Yep.
in, because when you get a car, you're stuck. Like the 401 in Toronto, the 401 parking lot, or Karen, you're down in Vancouver. My heart bleeds for you.
Highway 1.
Yeah.
You know, and all the tributary, I mean, everything gridlocks. And we get that in Powell
Yeah.
River. Sometimes there are 3 or 4 cars at the light. You have to, you have to wait for them to leave. You know, it can be difficult here. It can take you as much as
Life is tough.
10 minutes, 10 to 11 minutes to cross the whole city. You know, it's difficult here. Yeah,
That takes me 2 blocks sometimes.
I
So funny.
know. Jen, what were you going to
Dan,
say?
well, I was going to say that it was interesting that you brought up cars because in Japan, because of the inflation and the cost of everything in Japan and limited land and things like that, home ownership became out of reach, I would dare say, at least a generation ago. And
Mhm.
so the home ownership isn't a possibility, but car ownership is. And so it seems like in my research, I'm seeing that folks that are in Japan, when they are earning their own money for the first time, they take more pride in their car than they would in trying to buy a home because that's out of reach. And so it's interesting because we keep coming back to geographic locations. This whole episode, social and cultural, was all about basically a global spin on all this. And isn't it funny how every single one of these questions that we've asked has been geographic dependent, every one of them, which is really incredible. I find it really interesting that you either have great pride in your vehicle or you want no vehicle at all. I know several people in Manhattan who have no driver's license. And I just go, how on earth is that possible? And they say, well, I take taxis or I take the subway or I call an Uber or I have a bike or they have a car share with somebody else. And it's like, because they don't want to pay for parking. They don't want to worry about the gas. There's no gas stations in Manhattan. They have to go somewhere else to get gas. I mean, the logistics of operating a vehicle in these certain metropolitan areas is just ridiculous. And so it again, super hyper local depending on where you are. Isn't that funny? Mm,
Yes.
excellent. Well,
I
you
had a
guys, thank
friend
you.
who
Go ahead, Karen. Yeah.
I had a friend who gave up her car because, and she worked for ICBC, which is the insurance provider in BC, car insurance provider
Hmm.
in BC. She actually sat down and ran the numbers and said, okay, to purchase a car, I have to spend X amount of dollars. If I
Hmm.
finance it over 7, 9 years, whatever, I'm paying this much per month. My car insurance is this much per month. My fuel is this much per month. My
Right.
maintenance average is X amount. If I get rid of my car and rent a car for 2 weeks out of the year for my vacation, I've saved thousands of dollars. And then otherwise she took public transit um or Uber. Well, Uber wasn't around then, but she would take taxis or the ride shares, the car shares.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's absolutely
Yeah.
wild. Well, and I'll throw in one more thing about cars. If anybody has ever been in Washington, D.C., at the Pentagon, something
Oh,
very unique is happening, and it's called slugging. Have you guys ever heard of this? Slugging is a term that I think was coined there, that you have high occupancy vehicle lanes, HOV lanes. I know they have them in Vancouver and lots of places all over the world, that is either 2 or 3 people that are required so that you can get into these HOV lanes. And so what they do at
oh,
the Pentagon
hitchhikers.
is they have these lines that, depending on where you want to go, a person who has driven their car, one single person, but needs at least one more or two more people going in the same direction, but they want to get in the HOV lane. And so you will literally pick up strangers that could be generals, admirals, it doesn't matter, but you're just picking up these people and they are literally hitching a ride for the sake of the HOV lane. And I don't know if they pay the driver or not. I mean, I have no idea. I don't know the protocol, but I know this is a huge deal because they have slugging lanes based on the direction you're going from the Pentagon. Huge deal. Slugging is a new thing. And I'm going, I, I've never even heard of this. Do you guys ever heard of this?
There's a guy in
No.
Vancouver who is making his living as the extra passenger during rush hour. And then because and then he works, so he's mobile. He works, he goes online. There's a site, I don't know what it is, but you can find him or other people and they will get in your car. You pay them
Mm.
to take the
You
ride
pay
with you.
them.
You pay them and they then go and they sit in a coffee shop somewhere and return with you or with someone else. There's a site in Vancouver for doing that. Yeah.
That is
I
wild.
don't know what
That
it's
is wild. But
called.
well, again, it's so funny. It's how different places adapt different things. So very cool. Well, you guys, we could talk more and more, and I'd like to do another series with you guys. Maybe we'll do another one in
Perfect.
2026. Doesn't have to be about rentals. Of course, it still has to be about housing. So we have to figure out a different one. But the series has been very well received. Listeners really like this format. I think they like hearing us banter back and forth in our perspectives. But these, obviously, these table topic questions have sparked great conversation with a different dynamic. And I have no doubt that we'll do more Toastmasters based podcast episodes in the future. Now, if a listener wants to know more about either the Money Masters Toastmasters Club or Toastmasters in general, where do they go?
Check the links below. We've given you some links for that. Toastmasters International. You can find a club anywhere in the world. We have hundreds of thousands of members, thousands and thousands of clubs, and they're easy to join. And it is a very, very cost-effective way to get leadership skills, to get management skills, to get life skills, to meet fabulous people, and to become comfortable speaking in public in many different formats. Remember, public speaking isn't just about formal speeches. It's about engaging with people in different situations. As a landlord, as a tenant, you engage with people. We can help you with the skills on how to handle the dynamics of that. And Money Matters, the link's down below. We welcome you. Monday nights,
Excellent.
Pacific time.
Yes. So Toastmasters site is toastmasters.org, and Money Matters is Money Matters, one word, dot Toastmasters clubs with an S .org. But as Dan
Excellent.
said, the links are below. We'd love to see you and love to meet you and have further discussions.
Excellent. Thank you both, Karen and Dan. Super enjoyed doing these podcast episodes with you. It's been really fun, and I know we'll do more in the future. Thank you so much for educating everybody about Toastmasters and table topics. Thank you.
See you
Thank you.
soon.
Bye.